All right, this video is for the 5.2 lesson on Moodle because some of the audio is not working on his videos. So if you are following my timeline, you should be on chapter 5 now. As of today, Friday, or Monday, you should have written your chapter 4 test and now you're on chapter 5. Okay, so chapter 5 is all about relations and functions. The first couple lessons are kind of weird because you've never seen these circle diagrams before with like a whole bunch of lines that go from one to the other and they're joining them and then they're asking you if they're relations or functions or what they are. So do the 5.1 lesson that Moodle has posted. Then I want you to watch the 5.2 introduction video. You need to watch that because the sound works on that one. And then I want you to watch the example 1 video because the sound works on that one as well. It is example 2-3 that the sound doesn't work. And then halfway through example 3, it cuts in and it works. So he is explaining second half of example 3. But anyway, so what I'm going to do right now is go to example 2 and I'm going to voice over his annotations and all of his writing and stuff. So if I click on it, click play. So I guess pause my video right now and go back and watch those other 2 at the start of 5.2 if you haven't already. Okay, example 2. So you have an XY table, number of marbles and mass of marbles. So the table shows the masses, M in grams, of different numbers of identical marbles, which is N. N is number of marbles and M stands for mass. And then they just put G for grams because that's the unit. So part A says, why is this relation also a function? Okay, so it's a relation, but it's not necessarily a function until I identify it as a function. And let me look. If there's only one thing coming out of each domain, right there, all those green lines, then it is also a function. If it had 2 lines coming out of the number 1, then it's not a function. If it had 2 lines coming out of the number 2, then it's not a function. So this one is a function because he just wrote that it's a 1-to-1. So that is a function because there's one thing out of the domain going to one thing out of the range. Also, the other thing about domain and range is your X is always your domain and your Y is always your range. So in our case, the domain is number of marbles and the range is mass of marbles. Okay, then part B, identify the independent variable and the dependent. Okay, so the independent is always X and the dependent is always Y. So the independent, marbles, number of, and I think that's what he's going to write in brackets right now. Yeah, he just said the first part of the table is always the independent. And then the dependent variable is always the Y, and it's the second part of the table. So if it's an XY table that they give you in the question, they will. The X part is the independent, the Y part is the dependent. Okay, and then part C says write the domain and the range. So now the other thing you can memorize is that X is always domain and Y is always range. So if you can link all of those two together, like all of those together, the X is always the independent, it's the X part of the table, and it's always the domain. Then start getting used to the fact that the Y part of the table is always the dependent and it's always the range. So then he just lists, I'm just going to pause. Function notation is written as a letter and then in brackets another letter and then the regular equation. It's weird, but it's saying that it's a function of something else. So the volume is a function of the distance that you traveled, which makes sense. Your liters in your car is going to depend on how many kilometers you traveled. So that's the D, the distance. Okay, now he's going to solve part B. So all you do to write function notation, done. You write the, in his blue writing right here, you write the equation with 2 letters, 2 variables in it. You just change it from the original equation that they give you, and you change it into function notation by putting that letter, D, in behind the capital V on the left-hand side. The Y side, I guess you would say, because usually it's Y equals mx plus b. It's kind of in that format. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead now because I want to see some solving. Okay. So, all right. Part B, determine the value of V at 600. So what if you had 600 kilometers were traveled? If you substitute 600 in for D, what is your volume going to be? So think about a gas tank of a vehicle. If you have gone 600 kilometers, how many liters are going to be left in that vehicle? Let's find out using this equation. So what you do is you sub in 600 anytime that you see D. So you're going to put it in, you put it in on the left-hand side like V of 600 just to show that that's the number that you're solving for. But your actual math is not done until the right-hand side, right here. So I'm going to skip ahead. What he does is he gets, I guess you just type it into your calculator, 0.08 negative times 600 equals plus 50 equals 2. The answer is 2. So you have 2 liters of gas left if you've gone 600K. That's one type of equation. The other type of solving question in this lesson is part C, and it says determine the volume or the value of D when V of D equals 26. So that's not the same as part B. There are 2 different types of questions here. The first one is that you put the 600 in where you saw D and you solved it all on the right-hand side. This type of question is completely different. You want to know when the volume is 26. If you have 26 liters left in your gas tank, how many kilometers did you go? So it's the other way. It's kind of backwards. So I'm going to skip ahead and show you with his font here with his writing. Hang on. Okay, write the function notation down. V of D equals blah, blah, blah. Now this time you're going to put a 26 in for this entire side. So you put 26 in over here, and then you get D by itself. So it's a little bit more manipulating, I guess, which you've been doing since grade 9. So you should be able to get that letter by itself. So the problem is that you've got a 50 with it. So first of all, subtract 50 from both sides. So he's going to show that. You minus 50 from both sides because that is a problem right now because it's connected to the letter with D, or the number that's with D. Get rid of the 50. And then you have negative 24 on that side because 26 minus 50 is negative 24. And then you have that left. And then how do you get D totally by itself? Divide by negative 0.08. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. I'm just grabbing the bar here and just kind of skipping ahead. 300 kilometers is how far you went. I don't know if he writes a sentence here at the end. Not really. He just types kilometers at the end there. Okay, so if you have 26 liters left in your gas tank, you traveled 300 kilometers. Okay, that should be it. So there are 2 types of questions, and then he just kind of talks at the end of the video. There's 2 types of solving equations. 2 types of questions that you'll be asked in 5.2. One of them is where you put the number in for D, and the other one is where you put the number in for V of D, replace it, and you're solving for distance. Okay, so now you can do the 5.2 assignment.